Wow. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I hope you had a great start to your day, and I hope you had a great conference so far. I hope that you enjoyed the talks. I know that I did. I wanted to start by thanking the organizers of Voxxed Days for inviting me to talk here in one of my favorite cities in the world, lovely Thessaloniki. This is my first person event for more than 3 to 4 years, because back in 2018, 2019, I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop talking in meetups and conferences because I'm bored, I'm tired, I need some time, and boy, did I get time. Today I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite subjects in the whole world, and that is hybrid work. I'm going to take just a brief look at the agenda for today. I'm going to start by giving you some background into my career, why I am here today to talk to you about hybrid work. And then we're going to try to define hybrid work, just to give it a scope. And after that, we're going to explore all the different challenges that this kind of flexible work brought into the workplace. And the biggest and arguably the best part of the talk is going to be about best practices, how to make hybrid work for you and your team. Now, I love talking about remote work. I love talking about hybrid work. It's a matter very near and dear to my heart because I've been doing it for so long. I've been working remotely since 2010. First as a freelancer, then as a full-time employee, and now as a coach and educator. And last year, after 9 whole years in the company, I left my VP design position at Workable, where I was leading a team of 18 people, and I was dividing my time between my home office in Crete and the company office in Athens, where my team was located. So I've been doing this remote thing, this hybrid thing, well before it was cool. And one could say that I am well-versed in remote work. So theoretically, the fact that my whole team in 2020 just switched from one day to the other to remote work would make the whole thing easier for me, right? Well, no, because this huge thing called pandemic, of course, hit me really hard as well, because all of a sudden we lost all of our coping mechanisms. We couldn't meet our friends, we couldn't see our family, we couldn't meet our co-workers. And we've worked and worked and worked and worked inside our homes, which after a while felt like prison. Now, the pandemic brought a generation's worth of changes in the workplace in just 2 years. And companies are still reeling from it. They're still trying to save themselves. The lucky ones, especially in tech, were the ones that managed to change to remote work and weather the storm. And now, 2 years later, we're still learning how to live, how to work, and how to be productive with the coronavirus. And we see on the news every day, companies, even whole nations trying to signal the famed return to the office. But there's still a ton of uncertainty. We still don't know if returning to the office is the right next step. This is one of my favorite passive-aggressive messages from a boss ever. This is from a UK MP who went by the offices, and of course, half of his staff were working remotely. So he left this lovely message that says, "I look forward to seeing you in the office very soon." So, as we move into this post-pandemic world, and you can laugh here because I know that the cases are rising again. I had coronavirus 15 days ago, first time ever. We see teams looking for ways to renegotiate the idea of the office. And there's this so-called hybrid paradox. On one hand, most of us, we love the flexibility of remote work, but on the other hand, we miss social connection. And lots of us renegotiated our relationship with work as well. I'm the first one that did that. I left my job after 9 years. We're seeing people leaving their jobs without having anything lined up and prioritizing their health and their families. And last year, we had a phenomenon called the Great Resignation, or rather, the Great Reshuffling. And we've seen that a lot in tech, right? People just switching companies, leaving their jobs. And not only in tech, we've seen it in more traditional industries. If you're Greek, you know the situation with the tourism this year. They can't find employees. So this is where hybrid work comes in. Hybrid work is the combination of working at home and working in the office. And it is the logical next step in the workplace after 2 years of mostly remote work. Because it makes sense, right? Like, we love the flexibility of remote work, so why don't we sprinkle in some special days where we see our coworkers? Now, hybrid work has many variations, depending on the company that adopts it. And I understand now that this is like one of those posters that can be read both ways. So it's either infinite variety or infivarnatiety, but it's infinite variety. Sorry, my design skills are a bit rusty these days. Some companies allow for full freedom, giving their employees the chance to work from their homes or from their offices as they wish. And of course, this gives employees all the flexibility they want. But on the other hand, it makes it difficult to coordinate, especially when you don't know who's going to be in the office and when. Other companies have some employees working full-time remotely and some others working full-time from the office. And this is straightforward, right? Because for employees, there is no context switching. But there's a big rift between in-office employees and remote employees, and that must be dealt with care. And of course, there's an infinite number of combinations for hybrid work, which are tested every day by teams around the world. However, as it turns out, we don't know if we actually like hybrid work or not, and the data is contradicting. There's a recent research by Nicholas Bloom of Stanford University, which suggests that employees consider hybrid work, that blend of in-person and remote work, they consider that a perk that is equivalent to an 8% salary increase on average. So what does this mean? It means that we might prefer companies and positions that offer the hybrid work perk even over more well-paying positions with more rigid workplace policies. Well, on the other hand, we consider hybrid work exhausting. In a recent article by BBC, there are employees that complain about the constant context switching between work from home and in-office days, which is considered more emotionally taxing than fixed arrangements. All sense of a consistent routine, which is the one thing that kept us sane throughout the lockdowns, is out. Since hybrid work requires to constantly switch things up, which makes it very difficult to find a dependable routine in your workday. And the situation is especially taxing and difficult for employees that feel that they didn't have any saying in the matter. So when the flexible and hybrid work is dictated top-down, all sense of flexibility just flies out of the window. In many ways, hybrid work is a more difficult configuration than office first or remote first. And the main reason that it's difficult is because there's a constant divide between the people that work from home and those that work from the offices. And companies must actively work to reverse this. On one hand, we have people that work remotely that might feel that they're missing out on office discussions and opportunities for promotion. And on the other hand, we have people that work from the office who might feel that the cost and effort of the commute is unfair, and they might express distrust towards the engagement of remote employees. Now, other hybrid work pitfalls include the trust issues that might rise again. Remember the trust issues that rose when we switched to remote, when people just worked all day long just to prove that they could be productive from their homes? So these sentiments just rise again. Are the people that work from home really working at the same level as the people that work on site? Why has someone chosen to work from home exclusively? Are they committed to the company? Are they committed to the vision? And for the employees, there is also the effort of keeping two separate workspaces in office and at home, which might be problematic, especially in areas where there is no high-speed internet. My home didn't have any high-speed internet until very recently. Or when there are no quiet, work-friendly cafes to work from. And this is not an SMB, this is not a small and medium business problem only, right? For months now, we've seen Apple trying to impose a return to the office, and they face really strong opposition internally from their employees. And it even got to high-caliber attrition. We've seen executives from the company leaving the company because of that inflexible policy. And on the other hand, we have companies like Airbnb, who worked on a comprehensive plan for their employees to live and work from anywhere they want. And they set a new gold standard in tech. By the way, Airbnb reported that 800,000 people visited their jobs page right after they announced that program. So if you need an inspiration for your hiring process, there's your inspiration. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. I'm not here to prevent you from going hybrid. I'm a very pragmatical person, and what I want you to get out of this presentation is actionable ideas to try out in your workplace so that you can work more efficiently and you can collaborate without friction if you're working in a hybrid manner. So let's see together how we can make the most out of the hybrid workplace paradigm. First of all, I want to be completely clear. There is no handbook for hybrid work. This is something very new. The handbook is written as we speak. There is no best way to run hybrid teams because it all depends on the composition of the team and the type of work that you do. So don't expect catch-all solutions. Don't expect magic pills. And I would also urge you to avoid replicating what big companies try out for their teams, because most of us work in much smaller teams. We cannot afford mistakes the way that a bigger company can. Now, one best practice that seems to emerge from the day-to-day of hybrid work these past few months is syncing on-site days for all team members. So instead of having everyone come and go in the office as they please, the idea is that each team discuss and set aside days where everyone will be in the office together. And that is to maximize socializing and personal rapport. The key change here is that whatever plan you come up with, it will work better if it's a team decision, not a top-down decision, not a boss meeting with an HR department decision, right? So each team, the marketing team, the sales team, the engineering team, the design team, each team works differently. So they're the only ones that can make this decision for themselves. So try reserving office days for connection and for in-person meetings, and work from home days for more deep, heads-down work. And for this to work, you might want to reduce or even completely eliminate meetings and other distractions during work from home days. Some teams make it a habit to schedule in their calendars, do not disturb hours, to make sure that they have the time to work on bigger, more complex problems. And this can work really well for engineering teams, because I know that when you work on a problem, you want to fit the whole problem in your head before starting to work on it. So guard these do not disturb slots in your calendar and make it a habit not to interrupt others when you see in their calendar that they're not available. Activities like research and writing and complex planning, these might be best done from home, assuming, of course, that you have the space, both physically and mentally. And then brainstorming, creative activities, cross-team projects, social initiatives, these are best done in the office. While project management and mentoring and coordination, this can be done either virtually or face-to-face. You can also create separate routines for work from home days and in-office days, just to make sure that you don't spend time and effort context switching between the two. A sore point of hybrid work is also meetings. And actually, scratch that. Meetings suck for everyone, no matter where they work. And I think we collectively snapped during the pandemic, where we abruptly switched to remote work and we tried to reclaim some of the control that we lost. We tried to recreate the office environment by holding meetings all day long. I've seen teams holding like a meeting, all cameras on, all day, just to have the idea that you're working with your team. For me, that's very, very scary. So what can we do to make hybrid meetings, meetings where some people join from the office and some others remotely? How can we make this suck less? Now, research suggests that there is a 13% bump in the amount of meetings we attend daily after the pandemic, even if the average duration of a meeting is down by 20%. But the whole thing ended up extending our workday by 8%, which doesn't sound bad until you realize that 8% of our workday is almost 40 to 50 minutes. So we work 40, 50 minutes more because of meetings. Hybrid meetings are very, very hard. After all these years of me being the proverbial Charlie in Charlie's Angels, I was literally a voice in a speakerphone. I'm not even sure that it's possible to run them in a way that is both productive and equitable for both remote and co-located employees. And I want you to keep this in mind. Meetings are the most expensive tool that a company has. There are meeting cost calculators out there that can visualize how much money a meeting can cost a company, depending on the number of attendees and their seniority level. And I want you to try one. You'll be surprised how much even a stand-up meeting that runs over can cost. So we can learn a bit more about hybrid meetings from remote-first companies. Some remote-first companies that also had office space went as far as to abolish meeting rooms altogether in their offices at some point, urging all employees to join meetings as if they're working remotely, even if they're working from an office space. So when one person is remote, everyone joins remotely. Another way to improve hybrid meetings is to have fewer of them. So I always advise my clients to run a meeting audit every 1 to 2 quarters, just to make sure that the meetings that they have in place continue to work for them and their teams. And a good start is to audit your calendar by checking in which meetings you spend the most time. Are they recurring meetings or are they ad hoc meetings? Do you keep doing agile ceremonies that don't work for your team anymore? Just think about it a bit. How much value does everyone get from the meetings that you run in a day? And there are also more drastic ways to audit your calendar. Why not try removing all meetings from your schedule for the next 2 weeks and then just add back only the meetings that you think you need to work out to work effectively? Another tip I also have for you is to reduce the meeting duration. I've read a report somewhere that explained how the default value for a meeting duration in Google Calendar set a standard in our workplace on how long our meetings run. I think that they now changed it. I think now the default duration for a meeting is 30 minutes. But don't be afraid to set a 10-minute meeting, a 15-minute meeting. And if you finish work before the meeting is over, by all means, let people go. Don't try to cram in more discussion about things that were not in the agenda. So, which meetings are considered essential and which can be replaced by other processes? Meetings always work better for decision-making, provided that everyone attending had the time to prepare beforehand and is ready to take part in a discussion towards an end goal. And meetings are also great for building rapport for teams. So you cannot really replace weekly team meetings or all-hands meetings with an email. Also, if you work with someone and you can't really reach an agreement, even after 2 or 3 back and forths on a chat or on an email, it's best to just jump into a meeting and smooth things out. But on the other hand, you should avoid synchronous meetings for status updates, like stand-ups, for example. There are asynchronous tools out there that you can use to make sure that the team stays in the loop about what everyone works on. Also, meetings are not the best use of time when you want to give feedback on specific work, like when you do code reviews, or when you want to give feedback on a specific design. Task-related discussion should be kept in the tools that you use for tasks. Either that's GitHub, either Jira, Asana, or, I don't know, Figma. And when you're the meeting organizer, try to approach meetings in a subtractive way. Like, you remove time from someone's schedule, instead of an additive way, like you're just adding a meeting in someone's calendar. And before setting up a new meeting, I would urge you to ask yourself some questions. I know that's a cliche, but ask yourself, could this be an email instead? What outcomes do I want to come out of the meetings with? And have I made an agenda so that I can ensure that we're using our time well? On that last part, please don't schedule meetings without an agenda. I often told my coworkers that I would outright decline any meeting lacking an agenda, even if I don't need much, just 2 to 3 bullet points, what we're going to discuss. It's essential for hybrid meetings to come prepared and always keep the goal in sight. Also, if you want to make hybrid meetings work, it is essential to focus on 2 things. First, tech, and second, strict protocols in place. Like, companies have to make sure that there is up-to-date equipment in meeting rooms and in remote employees' home offices. And they have to also make sure that their employees have access to easy-to-use, feature-rich software. And you should also discuss with the rest of your team about microphone and camera protocol. Like, do we keep them on? Do we keep them off? Microsoft advises hybrid meetings to remote employees to join meetings with their camera on and the microphone off. Like, do you do something like that? How do you join a meeting when you're working from a noisy place, like a cafe? Is it okay to keep your camera off if you're joining a meeting, but you're also doing some chores at your home? We've all been there. How do we ensure that attendees don't talk over each other? And this is where the raise hand feature in Google Meet works wonders. Also, during a hybrid meeting, make sure that someone has the role of the facilitator. And in most meetings, the organizer can be the facilitator as well. And facilitators must be held accountable to do their job well. They have to ensure that everyone in the office talks in an acceptable volume. They have to check the remote employees to ensure that no one talks when being muted. And they have to make sure that everyone had the chance to express their opinions without interruptions. And before entering the meeting, you have to reiterate, okay, what are the next steps? And document the next steps in a way that can be easy to refer to later. There's no need, again, to be super fancy or super thorough. A simple bulleted list will do. And also, I know it's hard, but after hybrid meetings, if you happen to work from the office, please avoid to keep the conversation going without your remote coworkers present. There's nothing worse than ending a meeting thinking that the team decided something, only to learn later that the team will actually go forward with something else just because it was discussed face-to-face. Now, one buzzword that you might have heard a lot lately is async or asynchronous. And asynchronous work is the work that's based on asynchronous communication. And it allows teams to communicate and move projects forward without the need for every stakeholder to be available at the same time. Asynchronous work is based on the idea that for knowledge workers like we are, work should not be measured in hours. And it's a critical pillar of flexible remote and hybrid work. Now, what's asynchronous communication in practice? Instead of expecting all team members to instantly reply and participate in all work discussions, I don't know if you've seen Insight by Bo Burnham, the stand-up comedian, where he says, he has a song where he says, could I interest you in everything all of the time? That feels like our workplace sometimes. So we don't expect everyone to participate in all work discussions all the time. We give the opportunity to respond to their earliest convenience. And that creates the need for better tools, as well as thorough documentation and transparency. And also, async needs trust. Managers must put trust in their employees and their ability to perform. And that's hard, right? First, we had to trust them because they were working remotely, and now we have to trust them more? Like, what is the world coming to? Now, why do that? Why switch to a new work paradigm that feels so abstract? And it turns out the benefits of async work for teams are numerous. First of all, and more obvious effect is working with minimal distractions. And this can result in much more meaningful, high-quality work, especially when creating digital products. As I know that engineers and designers who work on a specific problem, we need time to focus and explore the problem from all sides. Also, asynchronous work offers more flexibility to employees, giving them the option to structure their workdays as they see fit. And this is ideal for caretakers and parents and people that need to work outside normal office hours. As you don't have to constantly be on top of Slack and email, asynchronous work reduces workplace stress and can lead to more high-quality discussions. Also, if inclusivity is important to you, as it should, async work can help you with that because it allows more personality types to thrive in the workplace and not just the extroverts that can think on their feet. Now, is it all rosy? Is it all perfect? Of course, it's not. And the most critical argument against asynchronous work is how the longer communication cycles can create problems in collaboration. And some roles are more prone to that, like try talking to a product manager or a project manager about asynchronous work and see how they react. And that's normal, because due to its nature, asynchronous work creates a significant coordination overhead, especially for project managers and people that generally need to coordinate teams. So it needs clear boundaries and strict rules to work properly. But you don't have to go full async from one day to the other if you want to adapt this new paradigm. It's not a black or white situation. Synchronous is better when you want to build trust and rapport, or when you want to bring heads together and brainstorm ideas. Synchronous communication is also perfect for tough conversations or emergencies that must be dealt with, as well as sensitive topics. You can't really do asynchronous performance reviews. You can't really do asynchronous layoffs. And if you do, you suck as a boss. On the other hand, you can use asynchronous communication in cases where you want to announce something to a wider group, but it doesn't require immediate feedback. And asynchronous can also be helpful when you want to provide context before a meeting or before an event, or when you need to communicate with different people that are not available at the same place at the same time. And I would argue that important company announcements should be done in an asynchronous way too, so in an email instead of in a meeting. And as you can understand, there is really no workplace that is truly asynchronous only or truly synchronous only. We all operate on different levels of mixed communication. And just keep in mind that asynchronous work will help you battle some of the issues that can come up with remote and hybrid work and will benefit your team in the long term. Now, we've talked a lot about how to optimize for remote employees and how to reduce that divide between co-located and remote employees. But hybrid work does not mean that, of course, you'll never see your team again. On the contrary, especially now, after 2 years of rolling lockdowns and strict safety measures, people want to connect in a safe way, of course, more than ever. We're here now, right? Meeting in person is one of the key elements to make hybrid setups work. And one could argue that this is counterintuitive, like the only way to make hybrid work is to meet in person, but I thought hybrid was flexible. And you're absolutely right, it is more flexible than the traditional office setup. However, knowing your coworkers, their mannerisms, their voice tone, their body language, this will immensely help you communicate with them in the future. Now, in a hybrid workplace, meeting in person should prioritize social connection, not deep work. Because I've been hearing and reading that complaint everywhere. Like, I return to the office only to be in Zoom meetings all day, like I did at home. Why did I return to the office? And this is why I suggested earlier to set aside office days for the whole team together. Not to say, of course, that when people meet in person, they won't do any kind of work, but this should be considered secondary. Now, there are 3 basic ways to meet in person when you work in a remote/hybrid setting. The first is company retreats, where the whole company is gathered in one place, and these are usually done once or twice per year. They can include anything from all-hands presentations by executives and lightning talks by members of different seniority levels, and hackathons, outdoors activities, company dinners, anything to help the team bond. And this can be a nice perk for employees because it can give you the chance to travel the world. And companies that do them often and are very organized about it, they often advertise them as perks. Then we have team meetups. These are mostly organized every quarter, and they are much more work-focused than company retreats. They can be used to kickstart new projects for teams and to plan the following months. They are much more contained, the company retreats, and their aim is to align the team and inspire its members to start working on something new. And finally, we have all the unofficial get-togethers, which can be any sort of gathering to celebrate an occasion, like launching a new feature, or for employees to attend a conference together, holiday parties, etc. These are not always organized by the company, but in many cases there is a budget which can be used to cover this kind of gatherings. Opportunities like these are super important for team building, so you shouldn't sleep on them. If you lead a team, just make an effort to include one of these, to organize some of this in the future. And if you're an employee, ask your HR department about doing something like that. Again, this doesn't need to be super elaborate. Your team is not going to organize a company retreat like Shopify. You can start small. These are just some ideas to bring people together in a more intentional way. And we've recently seen lots of companies downsizing their office space and spend more of their budget in social initiatives like that, which can really help with building and retaining the famous company culture. I think it's a great trend. Now, I hope that by now you have a better idea of what hybrid work includes, all the different forms that it can take, all the benefits, the pitfalls, and how to avoid them. I want you to truly understand there is no right or wrong way to approach hybrid work. It is highly dependent on team needs and team composition. Again, there is no rule book. We're writing it right now in this room. There's so much talk about the future of work these days, employees and their managers and CEOs and funds and entrepreneurs, we're all wondering what's next. It's highly unlikely that all this flexibility that was forced in our workplace 2 years ago is going to be a fad, especially in tech. We're still getting over a global pandemic that robbed us of a lot, and work is still not the first thing in our minds. Flexibility, we see that it is key for most job seekers when evaluating job opportunities. And hybrid work can provide a framework for us to get the best out of the ease of remote work and the structure and social connection of being on-site. We just need to rewire our brains again to get the best out of both worlds. And I, personally, I'm super excited about what this future of work will bring. Now, I think we have 5 minutes for some questions. And of course, if you want to discuss more, you can find me later during the break. The best way to get hold of me online and see how I can help you and your team is through my website, zaharenia.com. And you might want to subscribe to my newsletter, leadingby.design. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Zaharenia. What a great presentation. So let's move on to questions. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions here.
Don't jinx that.
Hey, Zaharenia.
Hi again.
Really great presentation. Thank you for this. So, for the purposes of my question, can I ask you to be the CEO of a 120 people company, a tech company, and this happens in my company, and I would love your ideas. So, you had remote people all over the place. Everything was working fine. The pandemic happened. It was really hard. You decided to go full hybrid. You're very happy because most of the stuff we saw in the presentation, you actually get to tick. It's going okay. And then you realize on your first point, which is to organize the office days, something weird has happened. You have asked everybody to be at least 3 days in the office. So of course, everybody takes 2 days work from home, which is natural. And then without you organizing anything, everybody organically started taking off, well, working from home, I'm sorry, not taking off, started working from home.
Monday and Friday.
Yeah. So now you're at a stage where on Monday and Friday, the office is like, you know, like those Western movies where the thing flies and tumbleweeds.
Crickets.
And maybe there are a couple of developers who want to really focus.
Okay.
And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So as a CEO, you have to think about, office costs, you know, how much it costs you to feed people. So is that okay? How would you deal with that? Would you even deal with that?
I'm not sure that I would set like an arbitrary like minimum of days that you have to be in the office. Like why is it 3 days? Why is it not 3 days working from home? Why don't you let the teams decide if they're going to take some days working from home or in the office? Maybe a team works perfectly remotely and they proved that during the pandemic, and now you ask them to be 3 days in the office. Why? Why should you do that? Maybe a team is fine working remotely and maybe having like 2 days in the office every month just to have like this big planning meeting. This can work. If you ask people to just come up to your arbitrary standard of like 3 days in the office, they're going to do things like that. They're going to take the days that matter to them the most working from home.
Zaharenia, just to add to that, I think clearly in a case like that, if you were to schedule more off-sites, more scheduled things where everybody has to come together, then there won't be a need that they'll come together on the Fridays and the Mondays, or not come together on the Fridays. So it's a case of kind of putting salt and pepper in the whole organization. But it's super interesting, and I had a question, but I think your question kind of answered my question, so I'll...
Okay.
Any more questions? We have one here.
Okay. Hi, Zaharenia. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, first of all, I'd like to add one thing as well to what we said before. Monday and Friday are working days as well. And even if people took off Tuesday and Wednesday, the office costs would be the same. So wherever we work remote first, remote only, or always in the office, I think we have to be results driven. So I don't think it makes any difference which days anyone would take, since it's inside the quota. And then I would like to ask a question, which is, I'm seeing companies quite big with different teams, with different cultures, each team. Some teams work finely when they are remote, some teams cannot. Also, there are teams that cannot work remotely, for example, data center personnel or different positions. How can you handle gently cases where some people and some teams tend to work perfectly remotely and other people have to be at the office, or they were mandated to get at the office because for some circumstances and they might feel bad and stuff like that? I do not know how I would handle this. What would you say?
Well, this comes with the job description, as you said. Like when you work in a data center, you know that you're not going to be able to work like 3 days from your home, right? So we have to treat people like adults, like they understand that some things that cannot be done. But again, I insist, if some teams, like engineering teams, one team chooses to meet at the office like 2 days per week, if the other team just is fine by working remotely, let them work remotely. Like you have to be, as a company, as a manager, as a CEO, you have to be very, very attentive to their needs and also be fair. Like anything that the teams decide, you have to be completely clear that this is up to the team. So if you think, the other team, you think it's unfair, like just make another decision for yourselves. I think it's very important we address that we should trust people. And we trusted people when we switched to remote. And most companies just reported that their productivity levels, they soared after switching to remote. Like, if we trusted them then, we should trust them now as well. And I think that most teams will do like not the right thing, I don't want to say that it's the right thing, but they will do the thing that works better for them. They're not children, they're not going to take like days off just because. So, yeah.
One last question.
Thank you for the presentation. One problem that I see in my work, I work for Dynacom Tankers. We develop everything in-house. Is the lack of consensus on certain philosophies that prevents us to use remote or hybrid in a productive manner. So I think that if the problems like the philosophy of are solved or set before like a set of ideas, principles that we should follow, and the hierarchy, of course, it's very crucial. Then hybrid and remote can work better because in our country we don't have infinite funds.
I don't think any country has infinite funds, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a recession coming as well. So.
And, it's costly to have proper management, and remote work enforces to have proper management.
Yeah.
And the management costs, bosses want to have minimal cost, and everything get done. So, yeah, that was my addition
remark.
to the...
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's going to be a panel later on in the other room where some of the questions around remote and what happened during the pandemic and how companies dealt with that. And I'll be facilitating that panel. I'm going to put in 3 questions, actually going to kind of try to force a discussion. So if you want to join that, perhaps we can discuss more of these issues there as well.
Are you hacking this room? So, yes. Thank you very much,
Thank you. Thank you very much.
A comment on my side.